You've heard it in the news, certainly before the last couple of weeks, but it seems we've been hearing a little bit more about it once again, which prompts our chat this half hour with Sheriff Matt Saxton and Detective Bryan Gandy about methamphetamine. Gentlemen, good morning to you.
Good morning, Richard.
Good morning.
Thanks for the time today. Is the meth problem overall still prominent, or are we just hearing more about it right now?
I think it's very prominent in our community, and it's a problem that's been growing for a lot of years.
So we still fight this regularly, and are we making any headway on it, I guess is the question.
Well, and you've seen it in the news quite a bit recently. I think a couple things we've been more active in putting press release out on those incidents, but it's not that it hasn't been an ongoing thing.
Sure.
We've been making a concerted effort with the agencies here in Calhoun County to work together to take down some of these meth labs. We've been obviously working closely with the city of Battle Creek, Emmett Township, Marshall, and Albion police agencies, tribal police. So we're all working together in an effort to take out as many meth labs as possible.
Boy, I imagine this is something with which you would agree that this kind of drug problem is different, because now we're talking about people trying to make it themselves, and it's combustible, and if you happen to be in the vicinity of a meth lab gone wrong, this could be a real problem.
Absolutely. Meth is a man-made drug. It's made with chemicals found around the house and also cold medicine. When you start making the drug, lots of bad things can happen. The labs can catch fire, they can explode. So it does affect the people in the community as well.
We're going to talk more about that when we come back in just a minute, and talk a little bit about what is different, because you can make it, and some of the things that have happened to try and thwart that, and see if we're making any progress in that area. That's coming up on WBCK. WBCK, Sheriff Matt Saxton is here, and Detective Bryan Gandy. We're talking about meth today, and you know, I suppose we were just discussing this during the break, that a lot of us who know nothing about meth learned something from Hollywood and television and maybe Breaking Bad and that sort of thing, and you start to get the notion for what you talked about, that this is man-made, you make it. But most people are not making it in a fancy lab like Walter White. They're doing it amongst us in what could be a public area.
Absolutely. Most of the labs that we're encountering here in Calhoun County are made in 2-liter pop bottles or other types of juice bottles. And they're making it in hotel rooms, apartments, rental homes, barns, anywhere they can think of that they think they won't get caught. But during the making process, they're contaminating these areas that they're cooking in.
So what is it about this process that makes things contaminated?
When they start mixing the household chemicals together with everything, a chemical reaction takes place, and it has to off-gas, and the gases that come off and have to be let out of the 2-liter bottle or whatever container they're using, they get into the air and they get all over the walls and everything else, and that's the contamination that's there.
And then if this is a hotel room or a rental home, as you say, they leave, the next person comes in, and that's harmful.
It's very harmful. People have reported respiratory problems, skin irritations, lots of different things associated with this contamination.
Oh, and all of our investigators that process a meth scene have to have an annual physical with a breathing test with that to make sure they aren't seeing any side effects from continuing to investigate these labs.
Right. And they just don't waltz right in there when a scene like that is discovered. I presume that you're well covered.
Absolutely. We have a full suit that we have to put on with boots and gloves, and we also wear air purifying respirators, if not SCBAs, depending on the circumstances.
So there have been steps taken to monitor mass sales of cold medicine and things that might be interesting to someone who wanted to make meth? I presume that in the past someone could walk into the Walgreens on the corner and grab as much cold medicine as they want and walk out. It doesn't work that way anymore, right?
There's been several laws enacted here in Michigan to help stem the meth issue. But everyone put in place, they either change the process of making it or find ways to get the materials that they need. But the laws that have been enacted have helped with the investigation of meth labs. We're able to get some information that helps our investigators with the investigation of these labs.
The Methamphetamine Act of 2005 was enacted, and in 2005, that's when cold medicine was put behind the counter. And anyone that wanted to buy that cold medicine that contained pseudoephedrine, they have to show ID to purchase that, and they're limited to 2 boxes. Before that, people could go in and buy as much as they wanted to. So the law changed and limited how much a person can buy.
So that helped, it sounds like, for a while anyway.
It did help for a while. They figured out ways around that and started recruiting other people to buy cold medicine for them. So they just changed the way they were doing business, and they're back up and running pretty quickly.
I suppose it's important to underscore the fact here that this is an addiction, right? In fact, I've been told that meth is one of the most addictive drugs there is. Is that true?
That is true. It's the most addictive drug that there is. Only 6% of meth addicts ever recover from that addiction, and that's the lowest recovery rate of any of the drugs out there.
Wow. Let that statistic sink in a second. So now we're talking about folks who have very little control over the addiction that they have, I presume.
Right. Once they're addicted, it pretty much consumes their lives. All they want to do is find more meth, make more meth, and it's a vicious cycle. Just keeps going in a circle.
And that has a ripple effect across the community, doesn't it, Sheriff?
Yes, obviously they need to get the financing to purchase these things, so many of them revert to theft. Many of our property crimes are connected to the meth industry. They will steal to attain money to buy what is needed to purchase.
We'll talk about what comes next in terms of trying to fight this in just a minute on WBCK. WBCK, we're talking with Sheriff Matt Saxton and Detective Bryan Gandy about meth. Is our area generally, gentlemen, in line with the rest of the country as it relates to meth statistics?
Well, actually, those numbers for the Great Lakes states, for the top states in the United States for meth labs are Indiana, Ohio, Illinois, and Michigan. Michigan being number 2 at this point this year with 865, and Indiana is number 1 right now with almost 1,200 labs reported just this year.
In the whole country?
Yes.
Here?
Yep.
What accounts for that? Do we know?
It could be. I believe it started with the ingredients that were needed when this first started. Back in 2002, when I started dealing with meth labs, the process for cooking was a little bit different, and you needed the anhydrous ammonia, which is very prevalent here in the farming communities and everything else. So with that, they were able to find it here, and people started becoming addicted, and it's just kind of snowballed since then.
So are we looking at some kind of innovation to try and fight this? It seems like if we're way up there in the statistics, I'm guessing it takes some creative thinking to try and deal with it.
Well, and I think that's what we're trying to do here in Calhoun County with the agencies working together. We at least monthly get a meth group together, and last week, I believe, was the last one in the news.
Right.
That was part of our group work together, and we're able to take, I believe, 7 folks into custody for meth charges, as well as, I think, 3 labs this last week. So they don't stop at jurisdictional lines, so we know that the folks dealing with it out in the Out County are the same either in Battle Creek or Emmett or Albion or Marshall. So working together and putting that concerted effort together.
Yeah, it helps to track all this down. Now, the question is, though, when you're dealing with someone who's addicted, they're going to go, you've arrested them, they're going through the process, but what does this mean for them now as they go through that process? And now they're addicted, but maybe they're not getting the fix they need, and they get out. What happens next?
In my experience, most of the people that I've dealt with, they'll go to jail, do the time, whatever they need. When they come back out, quite a few of them go right back to cooking methamphetamine and using methamphetamine again. One of the things that some states have looked at, and it's been being talked about here in Michigan, is possibly putting pseudoephedrine as a prescription-only drug instead of selling it over the counter. That seems to have helped in some other states doing that and decreasing the number of labs and everything else. So that may be a possibility here down the road.
What about drug treatment courts? We've seen that in Kalamazoo County where a judge and some law enforcement folks will look for certain types of addiction cases and say, okay, this person might not fall into a trap if we're able to get him or her off of the addictive behavior. And so there's a court-monitored rehab that goes on. Is that helpful?
I believe the specialty courts, especially here in Calhoun County, have been very helpful. We have several of them that are active within the county. A drug court and the circuit court here, both men and women's, sobriety court and district court for multiple offender drunk drivings. And the sobriety court here in Calhoun County, we have yet to have a graduate that has been rearrested for drunk driving.
Wow.
So the specialty courts are the trend. We're seeing more and more of them, and I think it does help. It's a community-based effort to correct the problem as opposed to incarceration and hope they don't make the same mistake a second time.
Right. Although, as you've indicated, the statistics about meth are pretty sobering. 6%, I think you said, are able to beat it. That's really low.
Yes, it is very low. It's the lowest recovery rate of any of the drugs out there. However, talking about the sobriety courts, if we can help that one person, that's one person that has helped. So.
Do you, when you're investigating these situations, Detective, do you see the same people back out on the street with this problem that you've arrested?
I do. It's very common that we run into the same people over and over again. They just can't break the cycle, and we end up seeing each other again. And quite frankly, they know us and we know them.
Yeah, so. Right. And that can make it tricky to investigate too, I imagine.
Yeah.
They see you coming. Yeah.
And it's really amazing to see the change in their booking photos or how that drug affects that person. It's sad to see a 19-year-old full of life, and then 27 years old, they look like they're 60. And
oh, my.
And the physical effects are devastating. Severe weight loss and malnutrition. They have open, dry sores on their skin that we refer to as crank bugs. They also start losing their teeth. The teeth start rotting at the root and falling out. And
oh, my.
It's devastating, really.
So somebody listening to this who may not even have a notion that this is going on in their own town, their own state, is there something they can do, do you think, that might be helpful in this effort?
I think, keep your eyes open as to what's going on in your neighborhood. If there's strange smells or lots of activity, at a residence or wherever the problem may be occurring, you can report that through Silent Observer. If you don't want to get involved, you can call 911. But if you let somebody know about it, someone that's trained in this area can take a look at it and you don't always have to have your name involved in it. You just provide the information, and we can investigate it from there.
All right. Well, we appreciate the perspective. We'll stay in touch.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Richard.
All right. Thanks, gentlemen.